Hi everyone, Savannah here, and today we're sketching a peaceful little fox wearing a wonderful flower crown basking in the sunlight. I am using my free custom brush set here, which you can grab in the description below, and the sketch template and color palette are also both available for free on my Patreon. Let's jump in. The first thing we do is change that background color, so go to layers, click background color, and we're going to find the fox color palette, and we're going to pick this darker brown color as that backdrop. Then we're going to create a new layer, bring it below the outline layer, and we're going to start filling in the fox's general shape. You're going to grab that circle brush, which is again part of my custom brush set, and you're going to trace and fill in the general shape of this fox. Now that we have that general shape filled in, we're going to alpha lock this layer. So go to layers, select the fox layer and select alpha lock. What this does is as we're adding these colors to this area, it's going to keep it within that shape. What I'm going to do is actually add a new layer to add some of these details. So go to layers again, add a new layer and select clippy mask. We're going to do this light whitish color. Clippy mask basically does the same kind of thing as alpha lock but keeps this on a new layer. So we can do this for every different detail that we do for this fox. It doesn't have to be just for this section, but that essentially is so if you make a mistake on this layer, you can always erase it, go back, but it's not going to change to the shape of the fox because that's on its own separate layer, but it's going to clip it to that fox layer. So anything that you draw in that clippy mask layer, it's still going to be confined to the fox shape. And I'm just going to clean up this white layer a little bit, and then we will add some details here. So we're going to be pulling in quite a few different colors. We have the reddish orange color for the fox. On the back of their fur, we have this white underbelly kind of area here. So we're going to be adding in a lot of shadows and highlights to these different sections. And I'll show you kind of a technique that I use to make it look a little bit more like fur. And now I'm going to do a new layer. You can set this a clippy mask. You don't necessarily have to, but this is going to be for the eye because it's well within the shape of the fox. We don't have to worry about it going outside that layer. But I'm going to do the eye on a separate layer. I'm going to make this really dark for now, but then we'll lighten it up as we add in details. And now I'm going to start adding in colors here. So I'm going to work on this ear and that's kind of tucked in the back. I'm going to do a new layer here, and then I'm going to grab a brown color and just start adding in where the shadow would be for the ears being tucked. I'm going to start adding that in. And I'm going to fill this in because it's on a separate layer. We can alpha lock this here in a second and add more details to it, and it won't affect the surrounding area of the fox. So now I'm going to just add in some lighter colors here. I'm going to have the sun kind of hitting from the top of the head here. And so I'm going to make it lighter as we go up towards the top for this fox. And for this, I am using that circle blend brush. It is pressure sensitive, so you can add in that color very lightly and build up on it. It blends very nicely between these colors. And so use a circle blend brush if you want a little bit more of a stark contrast. You can definitely use a regular circle brush, but I like the little bit of blendability, make it a little bit more seamless. And now I'm going to add some detail to the actual fox layer. So for this ear, I'm adding a little bit of that darker tipped ear here. I'll add in some more details as well as we go in, but I'm going to do quite a bit of the detail work on the actual fox layer. And I ended up changing the background color because it was a little bit harder to see with this dark ear against the background. You can keep it that darker color if you want to. It's just making it a little bit easier for me to see, and then we can build up that background here as we progress, give it a little bit more dimension. And I'm still using that circle blend brush. Most of the detail work that I'm going to be adding in here will be using that circle blend brush. I can blend things out as I go along, or just add a little bit of that color without putting too much into the picture. And then I'm kind of doing a little bit of a texture here as I'm doing this lighter white color. I'm first filling it in and then I'm kind of dragging it down a little bit. That's giving it a little bit of a fur-like texture. Again, we'll kind of build up on this. I'll show you what I do when we get to kind of the main body of the fox here, but I'm just adding a little bit of that blurredness here. And then I'm picking up color in between. So to grab color in between, like a lighter orange color that's been blended with the orange and the white, just hold your finger down on the color you want to use, and then it will pick that up in the color picker. You can use that then to blend between those two colors even further. It'll make it even more of a seamless blend. And now I'm going to add some darker tones to the fox here because the top of their head is going to be much lighter. Their body and more so to the left is going to be darker. So I'm going to bring those colors down and then we'll start blending in, adding a little bit of texture, make it look a little bit more like fur, but I want to darken this area first. Now that we have that color in, let's grab this really dark reddish orange color and add even more of that darkness to the left. We don't have to go all the way to where we just put most of that color in, because this is going to be the furthest left area that's going to be the darkest. And then I also undid the alpha lock so I can kind of bring it out a little bit with that fur, kind of that same texture that we did for when we had that white at the top of the nose. I'm doing that same kind of method here. So when you have your layer on alpha lock, you aren't able to go outside those lines that we created, but I wanted to go outside those lines. And so that's why I turned the alpha lock layer off. Same thing with this white. I turned the alpha lock layer off because I want to kind of drag it out a little bit to give it a little bit more of a fur-like texture. And then if you went a little too far, you can, well, you can erase it. That's going to completely erase it. It's not going to blend it in. But if you use the smudge brush here and that circle blend brush, then you can blend it and push it back a little bit. So I went a little too far with the white. I didn't like how far out it went, but you can use that smudge brush. Just make sure you have the circle blend brush selected under that, similar to what we used to bring that layer out. The other thing you can do to bring that shape over more to the right is if you just click on the layer, click the arrow here, you could drag it over. Just make sure you're on freeform because you want it to be the same height. You just want it to be a little less in the width. So that's what I did here. And then I'll add a little bit of the dark brown underneath where it wasn't shown before because we had the white layer, but I'll add a little bit of that back in so it blends a little better. And then I'm just kind of blending it out using those similar brush strokes. And then I'm going to grab more of that dark brown. I'm going to alpha lock these layers so that I'm not going outside lines. I'm going to bring a little bit more of this dark brown back into this area because now it's getting a little too light for my liking. I want it a little bit darker here on the left. And this is just a lot of going over the layer with these two colors, blending it out until you get to the point that you're happy with it. So it's just going to be a lot of this going back and forth between these two colors. And then I'm going to blend the darker, that mid-tone brown with this lighter brown. You can use the same technique of the dashes kind of bringing down the fur to make it look a little bit more like fur. But I'm just going to add a little bit of that blending here. Now I'm happy with that for now. Let's work on the white because the white is not going to be purely white. There is going to be shadow as well. So I'm grabbing this darker brown color. Same technique again that we've been doing on the red layer. I'm just going to add in some darker, blend it out with the white here, and then we will just continue on from there after that. one thing that I'm doing is with that fur at the front here, I'm not just gonna go left to right, kind of how I did with the rest of the fur. I'm gonna go down a little bit as well because that fur is gonna kind of go forward as well. And so I'm just trying to mimic what an actual like fur texture would look like. And so it's not gonna be just one direction. There's gonna be a couple different directions depending on the angle. And so that's what I'm trying to mimic here. And again, it's just a lot of going between. We're doing 3 colors here, so it's a lot of going in between these 3 colors, blending it out, getting it to what you want it to look like so it doesn't look so stark. Or if you do want, if that's the style you're going for, then that's fine as well. But for me, I'm blending it out because I don't want to be quite as stark. I want them to blend together. And now we're going to do a new layer, and we're going to do this as a clipping mask as well. This is where we're going to do the mouth. And so we're going to grab this really dark brownish color and add the mouth outline here. You can bring that brush down a little bit so it's not so big. And then we'll add this in. I'm still using that circle blend brush because you could just, it's pressure sensitive. So just press a little bit harder when you're filling in this area. But we're gonna just fill in the mouth area so we can work on the fur to make sure that it is going around where we want it to go around that muzzle. And I'm actually going to put the nose on this layer as well. So we did do it as a clipping mask, but because the white doesn't go out as far as we are doing with the nose, just turn the clipping mask off. We'll just have to trim up the mouth area here because that will stick out a little bit. So just erase a little of that area. But we're going to add the nose to this area, to this layer as well. Also, if you make a mistake to undo, you just tap the iPad with 2 fingers. That will undo it for you. To redo, you just tap with 3 fingers. I use that. You'll see me kind of tapping here throughout this video. But now we're going to add in the whiskers here for the fox before we move on to the next step. And now we're going to work on the eye layer. So we'll add some color to the eye. We'll add some definition around the eye on the fur. So the first thing I'm going to do is add some definition around the eye. Then we will add some color and some character to this eye. So it's not just black. We will give it some color and some definition here as well. I'm going to start with a little bit of this dark reddish orange. We're going to add it to the left. I'm going to lighten up this eye quite a bit here as we are working through this, but for now I'm just kind of building out where I think the eye should be. So we're using that dark, almost black color for the center of the eye, and then we're using the reddish color here to just kind of see where the kind of like the eye whites are. And then we're going to build up on the color. We're going to lighten it up a little bit. We're going to add a little bit of the orange-ish to their eye. I'm using that circle blend brush for all of this because it does blend very nicely. It's pressure sensitive, so you don't have to go too heavy-handed with the color as we're blending it. It just makes it much easier to blend and make it look like an eye. And again, I'm just building up the colors here, adding in more oranges if I feel like it's gotten too bright, or adding more white if I feel like it's not bright enough. And so you just want to keep building up on this eye until it's looking how you want. You can go completely different color if you want. You can do a blue eye, you can do purple eye, whatever you want to do in this section. I just happen to do the orange color because I kind of wanted to mimic the coloring of the fox here. And then of course we want to add a little bit of reflectiveness in the eye. So we're going to grab that really light color and just add a few dots and lines here just to make it look like the eye is reflecting the light. And then I'm going to clean up around the eye. It still doesn't look very natural and set into this, the head of the fox here. And so I'm going to work on this area for a little bit before we move on. Now I'm happy with how this is looking. I'm going to work on the crown. So we're going to do a new layer on top of everything else, but still below the outline layer. I'm going to grab this green, it's called yellow, but it's really green color, that circle brush. I'm just going to start adding in some of these leaves here. Don't worry too much about using the same color. We'll add some variation, some texture. I'm not doing super detailed work. I'm just really doing basic shapes for this crown. If you want to go more detailed, you absolutely can definitely do that. But for this purpose of this, I'm just kind of keeping it simple with these shapes here. And I'm just going to be pulling in a lot of these colors. So a lot of these yellows, a lot of the greens. I'm going to pull in some reds for the flowers, some oranges for the flowers, and just kind of keep building up this layer. And again, I'm doing very simple shapes, not really making anything, super detailed or defined. I'm just adding in some lines here and there, building it up. We'll add some a little bit of depth, a little bit of shadows here as well, but I'm just keeping it very simple and basic. And then I'm just going to go over the lines with some darker colors here, some lighter colors, just to build in a little bit more depth. And so there's a lot of this lighter yellow here. So I'm taking this darker yellow and just adding a little bit of tracing over top of what's already there. Give it a little bit more of a rougher sketch here. Again, that's just kind of the vibe I'm going for. If you want it to be more clean, you can definitely do that, but I'm kind of keeping this one a little bit more loose. And then I still want to work on this eye a little bit. It just looks a little out of sorts. So I'm adding like kind of like an eyebrow, I guess. Just a little bit of this indentation of where the eye would be maybe raised using that darker color. And then I'm going to blend it out. But I just think it looked a little bit out there on its own. And I just need something to help ground it. And then I'm going to darken a little bit this back ear. It's still very light to me because they're overlapping in the way that the light is hitting it. I just want to darken it just a little bit. And I'm going to lighten up the eye as well a little bit, just on where the white part is. Now that's looking much better to me. I'm going to move on. We're going to do the background. So add a new layer, bring it below everything else, and then we're going to add a little bit of detail. Again, you don't have to go too detailed here, just a little bit. I'm adding some plants and stuff to the background. I will blur it out because it's the background. So I'm just adding these shapes in very roughly, and then I'll blur it out. We'll add some more color definition. We'll add some highlights. Overall, the entire fox at the end and blur that out a little bit, and then we will be done. Now this is where we'll go on this layer. We'll go to adjustments, click Gaussian blur, and just blur this out a little bit. So that's why you don't have to go as detailed because it's going to get blurred in the end anyways. Add a new layer, bring that below the layer we just worked on, and then we're going to add some of this color to the background to give it more definition so it's not just the one color. And you don't have to blend this out as much because we're going to do a Gaussian blur. You can blend it if you want, but I'm going to do a pretty heavy Gaussian blur on this, so I don't need to go too crazy. So again, you go to adjustments, you go to Gaussian blur, and you just drag the pencil across the screen to get to the blurred effect that you want. I am going to add a little bit of reflection or lightness to the nose here because it is getting hit with that light. And so I'm just grabbing that white and just adding in the reflectiveness here and then blurring it a little bit by blending it out. And then for this last little bit, I'm going to turn the alpha lock layer off for the fox. I'm going to grab some of that yellow and I'm going to just bring a little bit of that fur texture like we did throughout this video. I'm going to bring that to the top of the fox's head here just to give it more definition. It looked a little too perfectly straight for my liking. I want it to be a little bit rougher, so that's what I'm doing here. I didn't like how short the nose looks, so I'm gonna merge all of these layers down. You can skip this part if you don't want to. The nose just looked a little short for me, so I'm gonna merge those layers. I'm gonna go into liquify, which is going to, you just grab kind of the area that you want, and it's gonna help you kind of move it out. So I have different size brush for this. Play with the sizing. You don't want to go too big, but you want big enough that you can move that whole kind of mouth out. That's what I'm doing here, and then you can shorten it to kind of do different areas. So I didn't like how short it was. I'm using this liquify setting here to bring it out a little bit because again, it was a little too short for my liking. I'm just going to grab a little bit of this orange color and do a little bit of that texture because we have all these layers merged together now. I'm just grabbing some of that orange and doing a little bit of that fur texture that we've been doing throughout just to blend the white and the orange together a little bit more. And I'm just doing some final nitpicking touch-ups here. You don't have to do this, you can skip ahead to the next section, but I'm just kind of touching up a little bit certain areas here around the mouth. And then, like I mentioned, we're going to add a glow overall this entire area once we're done. So we're gonna add a new layer, grab that yellow orange color, and we're gonna add a glow. So use that soft brush. This is a Procreate standard brush. We're gonna add some glow here, and then there's a brush in the brush kit that I have for free. It is a bunch of little dots. I don't have a title for it, it's just a bunch of little dots. I'm just gonna add some dots here and there to give it a little bit like these soft glowy orbs with this fox. And now that we have this kind of glowy aspect, we're going to change the blend mode. You can play around with the different ones. I ended up, I think, using lighter color for this, but you can do add, you can do screen, whichever one that you like the setting for. And then I do bring the opacity down because it's very bright. I don't want it to be as bright as it is. So I'll bring that opacity down. And then it's very glowy against all of the fox. We don't want it because the fox's head is not just flat. We want to have a little bit of that curvature. So when you go into erase, I'm going to erase some of this. Go into erase, make sure you have the same brush. So we're using that soft airbrush brush that we use for the glow. And I'm just going to erase some of this to give it less of that glowy over everything. I want it more so it's at the top and then kind of blending it out over the edge. And then I did a very soft Gaussian blur on this. I didn't go too hard and heavy with this. I just did a very soft glow. I wanted to be a little bit more whimsical and magical, and so I went softer with that glow. And there you have your fox with this beautiful flower crown. If you enjoyed sketching this dreamy fox, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your favorite woodland animal, and I'll see you in the next video.